What up, though, guys? This is your boy Reggie Dokes, and welcome to the second episode of our behind the scenes podcast of the upcoming feature length documentary, God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines, the story of Detroit Techno. Look, I'm so excited about this particular episode because in this episode, we take you back in time, each of us, in the 80s, when the scene of Detroit was so exciting for us, from the music to the parties to the venues. Our love for techno and the D didn't just start with this film. Each of us have our own history. And so we're going to get into that. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for tuning in. Let's go. Let's get into my Detroit hot picks, please. So the first one is by Detroit artist Javante. This brother is so hot and highly underrated producer. He put out this great EP on a small, great label out of Atlanta called People of Earth, run by a great guy by the name of Michael Scott. The EP is called Javante. It's a 4-track EP, I believe. And so this first one, which is one of my favorites, is called Way Back by Javante. Let's go.
Way back in time. Everybody was feeling good.
So let me just say that as a young person, the 80s, they were like some of the best times of my life. And I still reflect on those moments. Growing up, we had this DJ, right? Called himself Mojo. Okay? So how about Mojo played everything from pop to R&B to even symphony or orchestral music. I mean, he would come in with his intro, giving these words of inspiration, and in the background you could hear Bach or Beethoven playing. And in that same breath, he would play Prince, and then in the next breath, he would play B-52s and Yazoo and Parliament Funkadelic and James Brown. All of this he would play on his show. So a lot of us were exposed to a rich and diverse culture of music, right? And then too, we can't forget this was the 80s. So, in my opinion, some of the best music across all genres was created in the 80s. It was also an interesting time as far as club culture, especially among black teens. So how about we had what you call like halls, right? Imagine all these black kids going to these halls to party and to hear house music. For me, going to these parties, I was exposed to giants like Ray Berry and Steve Dunbar and Al Esther and oh my goodness, The Wizard and Al Upshaw and Daryl Shannon, and I mean, I could just go on, and Delano Smith, that is. I could just go on in terms of the folks I was exposed to as DJs. They were like gods to me, man. And it was just so inspiring to see this at such a young age. So ninth grade is when I started DJing, right? I had a play cousin. You know how we always have play cousins, right? I had a play cousin who was already a DJ and had DJ equipment. And I remember him giving me the headphones, and I think the record was Martin Circus, right? One of the most popular records in Detroit. You talking about rocking and getting the dance floor going? You play that Martin Circus. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hi, 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 hi. I mean, that record, that record got people hyped. I don't care if they played it 5 times in that night. It always packed the dance floor. Anyway, I digressed. So I was a DJ. My parents bought me my first set of turntables. They were SLB 200s by Techniques. I had to put a penny on the arm to keep the needle from skipping or jumping. My first real mixer was from Radio Shack, and it was a realistic mixer. That is what it was called, realistic mixer, and it had the fade sliders, so you had to go up and down, right? And then like the cue buttons were like these switches. I mean, it was really crazy, but you know, that's how I started, you know. And so 9th grade I was a DJ, 10th grade I was a DJ, and I met this cat at high school, Cass, and we're still good friends to this day, Greg Freeman. So Greg and I, we were introduced to each other from a mutual friend that I'm cool with still to this day as well, Earl King. Earl King introduced us, and then Greg introduced me to his boy, Will Guest. And Will Guest was the son of one of the Pips, Gladys Knight and the Pips, yes. And so we decided to form this group called Audio Sounds. And that was the beginning of my DJ career and theirs, doing teenage parties around the city of Detroit. And you know, we really thought we were into something when we were getting gigs at these halls and stuff, you know. And man, I just remember cats like leaning into the speakers, you know, listening to your blends. And you know, I just remember, you know, coming up as a DJ, you really had to practice, you know, because when you got to those parties, man, people were going to be like listening to how you blend your music and your transitions and all that stuff, man. So I think we practiced relentlessly. Like, I mean, after I got out of high school, I remember, you know, just going over Greg's house or Will's house, and we would make mixtapes, you know, for like 2 or 3 hours before I went home. You know, it was crazy, but it was a great time, and we loved what we were doing. We would make like $75. Once we started getting paid for these gigs, we made like $75 the whole night and split it 3 ways. And after the party, go to Burger King and blow half the money. We just thought we were really, really into something, you know. But it was a great time, man. We were playing everything again, from like B-52s, progressive, man, you name it. You know, we were playing it and mixing it, you know. But we had people that we could look up to that were risk takers, man, that were exceptional DJs, you know. And so that just kind of it gave us a blueprint of how one should be when it comes to DJing, you know. But DJing has always been like, you know, my first love, and it was probably not until like probably like 2001 is when I started to produce music. And that journey was interesting for me, because I was trying to put my music out on other people's labels, and you know, you always get the, well, I'm not feeling that, No, that's not a good fit for the label. Come back next year. You need to practice a little more with, your production skills, etc. I heard all of that and got tired of it and decided to start my own label, Psychostasia Recordings. And so when I did that, the next challenge was distribution, getting the music out there. And there was a distributor that I was trying to go through in New York, and they would always tell me, nope, sorry, maybe next time. Nope, sorry, maybe next time. And so I got tired of that. And I decided to look at who they distribute everyone's records to overseas. And I picked about 4 or 5 names, and once I started making music and pressing records of my label, I would send them copies of my release on vinyl for free to like 4 or 5 different places overseas. And just to create that buzz, and get my name up. And eventually things started to take off, and I was getting orders, and then eventually, the whole distribution thing worked out for me, and I was able to, distribute my label and get it out there. So that was the start of, me producing. So although I had my own label, as my name picked up, people started to become interested in me doing stuff for their labels. Isn't it funny how that works? But hey, sometimes, you have to go left to go right, as they say. And then I started to DJ internationally. I've had several experiences of DJing overseas and really loved that and really thought that was going to be my career and was really chasing that. And then, I had a family and had to make a decision like, do I keep doing this and not see my family, or do I get a regular job? And so I decided to put my music career on hold and get a 9-to-5 and stay home. But all the while I was working my 9-to-5, I was still doing music, and finally had gotten to the point where I was inspired enough to leave my 9-to-5 and pursue music full time. But this time, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to stretch myself creatively. So that's when I looked to composing for television and film. And just always had an interest in composing music for commercials, films, documentaries, etc. And so ended up landing a great gig in composing original music for the documentary, which is what this podcast is about, God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines. I've known the director of this documentary, Christian, ever since we were teens. And just decided to reach out to him and ask him like, yo, man, I'm really interested in getting my foot in composing. I would love to do some original music for the documentary. And he was like, yo, man, you got the job. You called me right on time. And I was like, man, that was easy. So once I jumped in with both feet with that job, man, it just really got my creative juices going, and I was just really inspired from that point on to just really pursue this whole composing thing. So I've been, very fortunate to land my music in a movie that's coming out. I've done a show that's on that came on BET. I've done music cues for the American Black Film Honors Program, where I, did music cues for the acceptance speech of Jamie Foxx and Lena Waithe, and so things have really moved in a direction that I am grateful for, because I just wanted to, like I said, do something different, push myself creatively, and just kind of create a situation, that could possibly mean, a better back end financially, because, brother got a family. And, as a creative in this business, it's always up and down, so you always want to diversify, But Detroit is where it all began for me. And although I no longer live in Detroit, I'm in Atlanta now. Detroit is always with me. Detroit is the place of inspiration that really set my career path in music on a beautiful journey. And so, hey, I'm glad to share this with you. And that's how I got in this game, and how Detroit shaped and molded me to be a creative. So this next one is still from the artist Javante on the EP called Javante on People of Earth. But this track is called Zodiac, another hot one. Javante, like I said, is highly underrated. He's a multi-instrumentalist and he has a great singing voice. We have worked together, made music together that's not out yet, but let me tell you, when it does come out, you're going to be excited. This brother is so humble, such a great guy, great spirit. And he got some moves too. Back in the day, I used to always see him at the parties in the D dancing. This was way before I knew that he could produce music. But anyway, this brother has a very interesting history. He used to work for Aretha Franklin. Used to work for her. And I think he was a dancer, and he learned a great deal from the Queen. Anyway, this brother is just an all-around talent, and I think a lot more attention needs to be brought to this brother Javante. Anyway, up next, Zodiac on People of Earth. Up next, we're going to hear from one of our producers on this project, Dave Grandison, give us his story of the 80s.
I'm a filmmaker, an instructional technologist, and a dad. I've been producing for about 20 years now. I want to talk to you a little bit about a documentary project called Gsgedm Drum Machines. This is a passion project that I've been working on with Washington Hill Productions. And we've been working on this project for, quite some time, because it's a very important project to get out in front of the eyes of people around the world. The odyssey that is this project started for me growing up in Detroit. And as a kid in Detroit, I saw the genre that we now call techno, from its inception to the global place that it plays in the world right now. Growing up as a kid in Detroit, like many kids in Detroit, music is in our veins. We live, we breathe music. One of my cousins is Eddie Holland from Holland Dozier Holland, who wrote a lot of Motown hits, and like a lot of the young people in Detroit, we had direct connections to Motown and the background that laid the roots for what became known as techno, now known as Detroit techno. And for me, I saw and I knew many of the creators of the art form when I was in high school. While growing up in Detroit, you could not escape the scene if you were a young person who was popular and hanging out with the kids in the underground who were a part of the scene that was what we called progressive house. We listened to this music, we lived it, we breathed it. But progressive house was a lot of things. It was not specifically only U.S. house. It was a mix of Italio house. It was a mix of electro. We were listening to new wave. We were listening to a wide variety of types of music, and we called it progressive or gress, and it was one of those things that we grew up with. We listened to it. We went to parties. Many of the parties that we went to were thrown by groups of young people, and these young people were entrepreneurs, were innovators. They had clubs called Snobs, Brats, Sabatino, Charivari, Hardware, Darla, and all of these clubs were like for high school fraternities or sororities, and obviously I can't not mention co-eds, which was very much like a sorority. These clubs, would throw parties. Some of them were more social clubs. Some of them were more, specifically for party promotion. But ultimately, they would, create a scene, and young people wanted to come see that scene. And the parties that were thrown were huge. They were peaceful. They were fun. And the entrepreneurs who owned these clubs would make a lot of money throwing parties. The party clubs would hire DJ crews with sound systems to spin at their parties. The competition was extremely, extremely tight. People wanted to outdo each other. The clubs wanted to outdo each other and throw the best parties in the city. And so they would hire a direct drive, that was, that had Todd Johnson and Mike Clark, or they would hire Deep Space Soundworks, that was Eddie Fowlkes, Juan, and Derek, to spin their parties. And the dopest party were always the ones that had the dopest DJs. So the competition is really what helped Detroit techno to be born in the city. As the Deep Space Soundworks started adding drum machines and synthesizers to their sound systems, this meant that these guys started programming synthesizers, programming drum machines. And this is what formed the basis of Detroit techno, because one of the first techno tracks was Charivari. The party club, Charivari, would drop that track at their parties, and people would go nuts. So you had this back and forth between DJ crews and party clubs that allowed techno to form because of the rivalries and because of the competitions between these groups. And then this eventually made its way onto the radio when Mojo would play tracks
that were created by these people. And the Wizard would play tracks that were created by people from this scene. And so this incubator is what Detroit is. Music is incubated in Detroit and makes its way around the world. It was a beautiful time to be in Detroit because, we were all in high school and we were all trying to do better and learn and figure out our way, in the scene. I was at a school called Benedictine. And as I started learning about the DJs that were in Detroit that were really, impacting me, my favorite was, Mojo, of course, but Mojo would come on super late at night. And so the way that I was able to connect with one of the DJs that I idolized was by becoming a teen reporter for my school at the local radio station. The DJ who played at that radio station was the Wizard. And he is Jeff Mills, if you know Jeff Mills, but his moniker at the time was the Wizard. He played a mix of house and pitched up hip hop. And, for me, it blew my mind what he would do. So I made sure that I got to be the teen reporter at my school so that I could go and watch him spin, because he would spin after school during the time that I could go see it, where Mojo would spin real late. So I had no chance of ever being able to connect with Mojo. But Jeff Mills was insane. Jeff Mills was a turntablist, and he would scratch, cut, transform, and mash up hip hop and house together using 3 turntables. And so for me, this blew my mind. I couldn't understand it, and I had to see it. That's why I was able to become, and I busted my butt to figure out how I could become the teen reporter for Benedictine on WDRQ, the station that Jeff Mills was DJing on. So, that was my first time realizing that there was something very special going on in Detroit, and that there's something that I need to be a part of, and I need to figure out how I'm going to fit into that scene. As I got older, I went away to college, and when I would come home, though, I would be at the parties, and I would go to the Music Institute. One of my good friends was Kai Alce, who now owns NDATL, the record label. When I would go see Kai Alce was in the booth with his cousin who had started the club, Chez Demire, and of course Derek May and the legendary DJs that would spin at the Music Institute. And so I was seeing these people. I was able to observe them doing what they do. And again, the scene impacted me. But again, I was back and forth between the schools that I was at and Detroit at the time. And so after leaving to go to college, my time was very much back and forth to visit my family and doing the things that young people do when we go home. We visit our friends. I would go and hang out with my friend Maurice Malone in his shop, and again seeing entrepreneurs like him who was a designer, but who was also connected to the music scene. He was in a band with called A Portrait of Radical People. A lot of people don't know that he was in a band with Mark Kitchen, MK, another famous DJ, and MK was there with us hanging out. And so, being, someone who was very deeply in the scene and knows these people, it was very, very important for me, as I saw the art form growing. I did not see the stories being documented and that bothered me, and so I didn't know how I was going to be able to impact at that time, and document these stories. But it bothered me, and I wanted to figure out ways to do it as I grew, and went on to and got out of college. I joined Teach for America. It brought me to the East Coast. I did a few years teaching, and while I was doing that, I found a internet radio station that was playing incredible DJs, and they were live streaming the video. I decided I was going to intern at this place while I was teaching during the daytime. This place was called the Pseudo Online Network.
The Pseudo Online Network was a pioneer in internet television. It was very much like MTV. There were channels that were playing shows like 88 Hip Hop, where we brought in top hip hop acts. There were shows like Freak, where we were bringing in top techno house DJs, and it was a live party where DJs were spinning, and anything you could think of was going on live, streamed as video online.
I interned there and was eventually hired as the associate producer, and then became a producer. This place was an incubator for the arts, and all types of music was being streamed out of this place all the time. So again, for me, at that point, it clicked, and I realized that I wanted to tell a story, and I wanted to make a film about Detroit techno. That was 98, 99. The first Detroit Electronic Music Festival happened. And that was the time that I said, hey, I'm going to make my pilgrimage back to Detroit, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to tell this story. I'm taking a crew, and I'm going to start filming, and I'm going to film as many DJs as I can, and start working on a film. And I called it Techno Mecca because, again, Detroit was the Mecca, and I felt like I was making a homecoming to Detroit for this first Detroit Electronic Music Festival. And so that's how, the first iteration of this film that we call God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines, was started. Techno Mecca was a project that I felt I was going to be able to kind of document the voices of current Detroit DJs and many of the legendary Detroit DJs to capture these stories that hadn't been told, to talk about how Detroit techno emerged from the party club scene in Detroit and started making its way globally due to its its pull, its gravitation, the beauty of it, and so that weekend I interviewed probably 15, 20 DJs. I interviewed Carl Craig. I interviewed Derek May. I interviewed Carol Marvin, who was one of the organizers, along with Carl Craig. And, I was able to really build a huge archive of top DJs that weekend. I was able to also talk to people who were important to the scene, like my friend Mark Feggins, who was also a musician at the time in New York. And again, he can tell you a little bit about the scene.
And I think it's really interesting that, myself and my peers, somehow I was telling a friend, it's like we all had the same dream, that somehow this music, this electronic elements that are infused into house and soul and funk, that we all hear it, and I'm here home for this festival to support it, because this is kind of a culmination of years of things that I think everybody felt, and we thought it needed to get out there and kind of let the world know it. Unfortunately, for the past 10 plus years, it's been the Europeans that have embraced this, and maybe many of the people from the States haven't really given it the recognition. So this festival is really important in that sense, to kind of bring it back home, let everybody know where it's from, where it's at, and also, it's kind of festival with the Detroit style. You got, families and little kids and heads and, jits, everything. So it's a really beautiful thing, and I think just one of the things I would say about the music beyond that is really how it came out of a very special moment in time, and it can happen again, but there are certain things that kind of led to its growth. I look back when I was in high school, we were all, we loved house music, what I always term as a kind of a pre-house music. Actually, we called it progressive, and it was very vocal based, electronic music in the sense that it was being created with drum machines and other things. But we listened to proto house, this progressive, and it was hot. It was like Chicago, Detroit. We loved it, couldn't get enough of it. And I think out of it, with the infusion of new wave music and a very supportive disc jockey in this town by the name of Mojo, who started to give love to some of these kids who put together their own records. This was how it happened, and unfortunately now you have some of the major media outlets that aren't supportive of the music. Even back again in the city, it's a little bit tougher to do what they did back in the day. We don't have that kind of support, and hopefully we can change that. Like everyone says, the internet. Well, maybe it can happen through that.
Rest in peace. Mark has passed on, but I'd be remiss because he created the logo for Techno Mecca, and he was a incredible influencer, and I was able to bounce a lot of ideas off of him, and because he had such a deep knowledge of the scene, he really helped me to contextualize a lot of things. Shortly after that, I think that I made contact with Washington Hill Productions because my friend Christian, I heard, was also working on a film project, and so we were connected. My friend Scott Chenault, who was one of the first editors who was helping me on the Techno Mecca project, connected me with Christian, and we put our heads together and started realizing that we were basically doing the same thing. So why should we try to build two competing projects? Why not work together? Collaboration is vital in our industry. For us to get anything done, we have to be able to build teams. And so Christian Hill and Jennifer Washington, came together, with myself, and I handed off probably 75 hours of footage that I had shot to them because I trusted them and I felt like they could help us all take this across the finish line. They were on the West Coast, I was on the East Coast, so we would be able to do interviews and kind of cover different parts of the country. I interviewed the Wizard several times. Jeff Mills, blessed me with several different interviews, that we were able to capture. Kyle Hall, I recorded his record cutting at Air Studios in London. I was able to do a lot, but, Jennifer and Christian were the catalyst to really be able to take things global, and really, they were able to travel to, a wide variety of locations that I wasn't able to really move to because I had just had kids, and so I wasn't able to really travel as much. But, they took up the mantle and took the project to South Africa. We raised funds, we crowdsourced it, and we were able to to shoot in South Africa. The shoot there became Electric Roots, the Detroit Sound Project, which was the first segment of this film project. And they also went to Russia, and they were able to take it to Tokyo. And again, they moved this project forward, and we were able to work to make this this thing what it is. I feel like it's vital for us to collaborate, and I think we all have a shared vision that African Americans and and other minority groups have to tell their own stories. When I went to grad school, prior to starting off, the work that I'm doing right now, I realized that there was a huge challenge to the correct historic documentation of the inceptions of genres. While I was working on my master's thesis, I discovered that, and my master's thesis was creating a online archive to help cultures to document their stories. And so my project, what I did was I went to Wikipedia as a part of my master's thesis project, and I updated the entry for Detroit Techno. And I discovered that within minutes, it was changed back to a incorrect version of the inception of Detroit Techno, because I have witnessed and seen and interacted with the creators of Detroit Techno, like Juan, like Jeff Mills, like Derek May, like Eddie Fowlkes, like Kevin Saunderson, like Mike Clark, Todd Johnson. These are all guys that that I've interacted with in a wide variety of ways. And so I am an original source. And so I went in, made a change to a entry in Wikipedia, and it was immediately changed back by whoever is whoever it thinks that they're the one who are shepherding and maintaining the Wikipedia archive, which is any Joe Blow. Why should they be able to do that? That bothered me. And so I started a website called the Music Origins Project to create vetted, curated stories that document the origins of cultural genres musically. And so the Music Origins Project, I've been working on for probably about 10 years now. And you can go to musicorigins.org to see the stories. You can see all of the places that our team has traveled to, creating Gsgedm drum machines, and you can see accurate depictions and accurate stories talking about the inceptions of genres around the world. And and this site also houses the educational components of Gsgedm drum machines. And so again, because I'm an educator at heart, it's important that we are also teaching young people about the cultural origins of the tools and the tools like drum machines and the tools like film that are used to tell our stories. So that's a little bit about my background, and I hope you understand now a little bit better my passion for this project and why I got started.
So let's get into this next one. This is definitely a classic on the Intangible Records. Okay, Terrence Parker, affectionately known as TP. So he put out this EP many moons ago with an artist who I truly admire and respect by the name of Gary Romalis. Gary Romalis is from the D. And he too is a producer that is highly overlooked. So Gary Romalis did this EP on Intangible Records, and so this first one that is a hot one is called "I'm Trying to Be Strong" by Gary Romalis. Check it out. That was so inspiring to hear. Up next, though, we have our executive producer giving her Detroit origin stories of the 80s, Jennifer Washington.
Thanks, Reg and Dave. I think it's interesting that that our stories, including Mark's, are so similar. But where my entry point into this narrative is when I was a young girl, I grew up on Detroit's Northwest Side. I'm actually reading excerpts from my upcoming book, God Said Give 'em Drum Machines, the book. It's a companion coffee table book that's going to be released alongside of the film. And this is kind of like my history into this. Just give me 1 second. It starts off like this. As a young girl growing up on Detroit's Northwest Side, I have early memories of my father getting dressed up in slick suits and platform shoes like in the movie Saturday Night Fever and going to the nightclub. He loved to dance and listen to disco music in his spare time. Friday nights were always fun in the Washington household. We would play the soundtrack of Saturday Night Fever and old Donna Summer records on the record player of our stereo system and sing and dance all the popular dances like the rock and couple-style dancing, much like steppers do in Detroit and Chicago, or even on Dancing with the Stars today. It was such a release for us as a family, no matter what craziness was happening in the city and in the world at that time. As I grew older, our Friday night routine was replaced with me stepping out on the block with my boombox. My neighborhood friends and I would listen to Mojo on the radio and dance until we were called in by our parents. Mojo was our favorite DJ. His playlist was sophisticated and highly regarded by the older kids on the block. His eclectic mix was more than just popular songs that other radio DJs were playing. He would play deep album cuts from artists like Reggie and Dave mentioned, from Prince to Parliament Funkadelics, B-52s, Kraftwerk, and so many more. Soon he would start to play this new, what I call funky, futuristic sounding music that just blew our minds. At that time, we had no idea who the artists were or the titles of the songs, except for maybe Cosmic Cars. I then began to record the mixes from the radio onto cassette tapes so I could listen to my favorite songs whenever I wanted. My Panasonic tape recorder I got for Christmas one year had awesome fader levels. I could move the bass and treble up and down to make the mixes sound even cooler. Soon it became my morning ritual to get up at 6 a.m. every day while I was in middle school. Before anyone else was up or knew what I was doing, I would head straight to the living room where my Panasonic lived and played my mixes, moving the levels and pretending to be doing something important. The music inspired me to think outside of my 12-year-old life and motivated me to exercise, doing aerobics specifically, and to start my happy day. Those mixtapes stayed with me as I grew up, and the songs remain on my workout playlist throughout all the technology changes to this day. After high school, I moved to LA, and the club music was much different. I didn't care for the elementary record playing in the club. The club and radio DJs were notorious for. They would actually play popular top 40 songs and had absolutely no idea how to blend one into the other. Oh my God. Over the years, coming home to Detroit to visit was always a treat. Being able to see my old friends and family was cool, but I couldn't wait to turn on the radio. Oh, how my entire being had missed the musical soundscape of the city. Tuning into the sped up weekend nightly mixes brought me back to some good old times. It was good for me to connect back to the energy and vibration of the city. It was calming after having lived in one of the biggest cities in the country, which happens to be 4 times the size of Detroit, Los Angeles, is what I'm talking about. But one of these visits was in 2010, the year of one of my high school reunions. After starting a family in Los Angeles, it was the first chance I had to let my hair down. It was on this trip that an old friend took me to a nondescript building on East Grand Boulevard in Detroit, just down the street from the old Motown Museum. It was here that a boulder fell on me, so to speak. I discovered that techno music was actually from Detroit. I was standing in the world's first techno museum, and it all clicked for me when I saw the vinyl record of one of my favorite songs, Cosmic Cars, in a display case on the wall. It was such an exciting moment for me to learn that the group Cybertron made this song and several of my other favorite songs of all time, and that this music was made right here in Detroit by Black people. Honestly, when I first learned the term techno in the 90s, I had associated with that yucky raver music from Europe. I was confused though. I mean, this funky futuristic music we listened to growing up that we sometimes referred to as progressive or house music was actually techno. I even found that this term was coined by Juan Atkins of Cybertron in the early 1980s to describe his music. How did I miss this? I thought to myself, this is a big deal. Why is there no sign on this building I'm standing in to identify it? Shout out to Underground Resistance anyway. We love y'all. But if Black Detroiters are responsible for the fastest growing genre of electronic dance music, why isn't this common knowledge? Why is it a secret? My mind grappled with this the rest of the day. My friend and I toured the city, and it continued, and we started to run into some of these techno pioneers like Eddie Fowlkes and Derek May at outdoor festivals downtown. It was a surreal experience for me as I tried to wrap my head around this. I thought, you mean to tell me these guys are alive and well and walking amongst us common folk? Then we found ourselves at a club in Detroit's Easter Market. I was having a blast when I bumped into another friend, Christian Hill, who I knew from LA. Christian was a filmmaker and mentioned to me that he had been filming local DJs in Detroit and promised he would share some of the footage with me when we got back. I left that party that night with some gnawing thoughts. It seemed as though someone needed to take responsibility in making sure as many people as possible knew that Detroit wasn't just a wasteland. Detroit was also the birthplace of techno music, and this was important. The next 10 years to date have been a whirlwind for me and Christian of documenting the Detroit techno scene and following the pioneers, Juan Atkins, Kevin Saunderson, Derek May, Eddie Fowlkes, Santonio Eccles, Blake Baxter, Mike Huckabee, and many more to faraway lands like London, Tokyo, Cape Town, Berlin, Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, and back to Detroit again. It's been a labor of love and a thrill getting to know these guys. Our small two-man crew eventually expanded over time to include David Grandison and his archive of early interviews with the guys, as well as the awesome Reggie Dokes, our composer, and Mary O'Byrne, Chris Riley, and Bailey Post, and our amazing support staff. And shout out to Bruno Morfitt in Cape Town for always making us look good. At this point, we are at the tail end of our journey, and Christian and I are tirelessly preparing to bring Gsgedm Drum Machines, the story of Detroit Techno, a feature-length documentary to a theater near you and or the streaming platform you prefer. Like many of you, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our release plans. However, we've been able to adapt quickly to the changing times. Most recently, we connected with Damian Daniel in London, a talented DP that has joined our team to help us with a few remaining overseas interviews.
I'm Damian Paul Daniel, and I'm a London, England-based director of photography. And my work comprises of documentaries, drama, feature films, commercials, and music videos. And I've been working in film and television for 25 years now. Where I started off as a trainee and worked my way up through the ranks of second and first assisting to become a lighting cameraman, director of photography, cinematographer about 13 years ago. One of the genres that I work in that I love is documentaries. I've always loved watching documentaries on TV and in the cinema, documentary features, and I get a lot of joy out of watching them. And I work on and I shoot documentary as well, and documentary features. And what I love about documentaries is you always learn something. There's always something. It doesn't matter what the documentary might be about. It could be music, it could be nature, it could be political. And just through, interviewing people that are specialists in their field, I've always found really, really interesting. And you always learn something new. So Christian Hill got my details from a producer called Delmar Washington, who's based in LA, and Delmar I met quite a few years ago because he was producing a couple of documentaries for the comedian Dave Chappelle when Dave came over to England to do came over to Europe to do a European tour, and Delmar got hold of me, and I joined them on part of that European and UK tour, doing a kind of all access behind the scenes documentary with Dave Chappelle, which was amazing, which was absolutely amazing, just traveling with them, around different places, one of the biggest comedians in the world. And I've done a couple of subsequent shoots with them over the last couple of years. So Delmar knows Christian, and Christian got my details, got hold of me a couple of months ago now, and said that he'd been, him and Jennifer Washington had been making a documentary called God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines, which was about the history of techno music in Detroit. And it immediately piqued my interest. I'm not a massive techno fan. I mean, my music is, the music I was most into is a lot of P-funk, funk, soul, hip-hop, ranging from, Parliament Funkadelic to Cameo to groups like Zap, then to, into the genres of rap and hip-hop, and especially jazz rap, especially groups like, Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul and Jungle Brothers, who I love. But I kind of, techno became very, very popular here in the UK. And I went to a couple of club nights, and they were always pretty cool. So Christian got hold of me and said, we've been making this documentary feature film over the last 10 years, and they wanted to shoot an interview with Normski. And Normski was part of my, that time in the 80s when I was going out and going clubbing. Normski was a real fixture. And he was also a television personality. He used to present this show on TV called Dance Energy, which was great. And for quite a few years, back then, you'd see Normski everywhere. So when Christian said, we want to, we're shooting an interview with Normski, I was like, yep, please, yep. Get me there, which was great. What I didn't, and Christian explained about the history of techno music, its roots starting in Detroit, which I had no idea about, but also how pivotal and big Normski was at that time, because I knew him as a presenter and DJ. What I didn't know is what his main thrust was photography, and some of the iconic photographs that Normski has taken from around the scene, which are photos that you've seen, which I didn't even know that was Normski. And it was like, oh my God, this man, this man is the boom, But Christian also explained that, he was right there back in Detroit at the time with all the main exponents of the music, photographing and meeting them and hanging out. And, there was just this whole rich history from that era, which Normski was right there. So for me, it was like, oh God, this is just going to be absolutely amazing. So Christian and Jennifer explained that, it was an interview they really wanted to do. They tried to get it, tried to do it, I think a couple of years ago, but for some reason it didn't happen. And then this time, this year they wanted to get it done, but then of course, we got scuppered with COVID, and not being able to travel. So, slightly unusual for me in that, because I'm so used to and I love working with directors, and having, because that's what I love about being a director of photography, is that it's my job to realise the director's vision on screen. And you do that by, it's a real collaboration and having someone physically there that you can bounce ideas off. But in this case, it wasn't going to happen because Christian and Jennifer couldn't travel. So, I mean, it was a fairly simple setup. But over the course of a few weeks, Christian, was brilliant, and he said, look man, Normski really wants to do this interview, and the perfect place to do it is, there's this museum here in London called the Museum of Youth Culture, which I hadn't even heard about, and it was only 10 minutes away from me. But this museum, Normski is a big part of this museum, and basically this museum charts the history of youth culture from, the 80s up to, present day, by way of photographs, by way of flyers and all that. And Normski was, Normski, I think, is part of the museum, but it seemed like the perfect venue, to the perfect location in which to shoot the interview. And when we arrived, so after we spoke about it, how we were going to do it, there was myself and a sound recordist. We scoped out the museum, and it was one of those places, as well as the photographs, there were record decks, there were turntables, it was a director of photography's dream, this place, because you could put the camera, didn't matter where you put the camera, there was a shot. It was great. Didn't have to work too hard about that. One of the things with shooting interviews with directors is, again, that collaboration you got there and you bounce ideas off. But this wasn't going to happen because obviously Christian and Jennifer were in the States, and it was kind of muted that maybe Christian would give me the questions, and I would ask relay them to Normski. But I just felt that Christian and Normski have had a dialogue and a friendship, and they've been talking about this for quite a while, and Christian's knowledge of techno. I mean, they've been shooting the documentary for 10 years. We needed for this to be a successful interview. You needed to have that one-to-one collaboration. It couldn't be led by me. Christian's knowledge of the scene and of Normski and what he's done is pivotal. It's absolutely pivotal. So we discussed how we would do it, and I said, well, listen, we said, techno. What's great, the thing that's come through this throughout this pandemic is, hey, Zoom. Technology's moved on. Zooming means that you can, you may not be physically there, but you feel like you're physically there. And for me, it was like important. It's like, let's use this technology. We can set the interview up in the traditional way, and Wi-Fi was I checked with the museum, made sure they had a strong Wi-Fi connection, and Wi-Fi was good, and I said, look, what we'll do is, we'll Zoom you in, Christian, and you can chat to Normski as if you were here, and you can conduct the interview. So we'll set the cameras up. I had 2 cameras on it, and I had the sound recordist, and I bought my laptop. We set up, it was actually an oil drum. There was an oil drum in the museum, which was exactly the right height for the eye line to set up the laptop as you would a real person. And we zoomed it in, and Normski and Christian chatted, and oh my God, it was how Normski is. I mean, the man, the energy from that man is sublime. I think it was something like a 4.5 hour interview. 4.5 hour interview. It was ridiculous, but it was fantastic. 4.5 hours. They spoke and they vibed. They were like boxers sparring. It was absolutely brilliant, and it was the privilege of. It was a real history lesson. I was hanging on every single word, and it absolutely. Normski was, talking about the history. He was talking about the photography. He was talking about gigs and concerts that he went to, which I was at as well. It wasn't just techno. He covered everything. And it absolutely, for myself and actually the sound recordist Ray, it took us right back. It's probably one of the best interviews I've ever had the privilege to film. It was amazing. It was amazing. 4 hours. It didn't feel like 4 hours. We were absolutely exhausted by the end of it, and we didn't even do anything physical. But it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant, and it proved that it was the right approach and the right way to go about it. Because using the technology, it just showed that if you may not have to, you don't have to be physically there to relay your point and get that and get that emotion coming back to you. It was an absolute pleasure, and yes, certainly a documentary that I so look forward to seeing the finished result, but also absolutely privileged to have been a very small part of. Thank you.
Yeah, I can dig it. Yeah, I can dig it. Yeah, I can dig it.
So this last one is still from the same record label, Intangible Records. I can't forget though. This EP is called Fult Tilt Production EP. Fult, F-U-L-T, Tilt Production EP. Gary Romales. And so this last one is called Can You Dig It? It's one of my favorites from this EP. This EP, man, oh goodness, I'm trying to see what year it came out. 1996. And I tell you, these tracks still are hot. Gary makes some very timeless music. He's a very diverse producer. That's one of the main reasons why I respect this brother, because I've heard him make everything from hip hop to R&B to floor thumping techno. Gary has been at this for a while, and not only is he a great producer, but he's also a great DJ. And I'm so honored that I was able to put out some of his music about a couple of years ago on my label, Psychostasia Recordings, because he can make some really nice, deep house tracks But anyway, let me quit talking and let's get to this music. Can You Dig It by Gary Romales.
Yeah, I can dig it.
Dig it.
Yeah, wow. Again, it's really wonderful to hear each of the respective origin stories for the superhero team that has formed, like Voltron, to finish this project.
Right.
It's cool. I love it. I love it.
Like Jennifer said, just hearing everybody's stories, just it was just that common thread of everyone had mentioned Mojo and how influential he was to a lot of us growing up. And Mojo was one of those DJs like no other. He played music that a lot of the other DJs in Detroit and really across the country were not playing. I mean, we're talking about a man who broke a lot of Prince's records when other radio stations wouldn't play his music. Mojo is credited for taking that leap because he was just that kind of DJ, that kind of personality. So like I said, it just it just kind of blessed all of us. It's funny because it comes full circle. I know my kids, they know house, they know classical, they know jazz, because that's just how a lot of us came up in Detroit. It just wasn't just one genre. We weren't one dimensional when it came to listening to this good music,
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that, because we cannot skip WJZZ. WJZZ was also a big part of what formed the basis for Detroit techno, because WJZZ was rocking groups like Azimuth, groups like Jean-Luc Ponty, electronic innovators way before, because Azimuth was giving you Brazilian electronic funk. And you had groups like Jean-Luc Ponty, and Jean was giving you I don't even know what to call Jean-Luc Ponty's form of jazz fusion. Where he was also doing very, very digital synthesized electronic jazz that was fused with rock and fused with other forms, and of course Stevie Wonder was playing with electronics and was an incredible experimenter in terms of electronic and drum machines. So we can't sleep on WJZZ.
Right.
I think it was interesting when Dave said that. I had never heard this before, so I learned something today. When he said, first of all, I thought it was real cute when you talked about being a teen reporter. That was exciting. I'm so sure. I wish I could have been a teen reporter. But I thought it was interesting. I had never heard the term gress. I mean, I knew progressive, but I didn't know it was shortened to gress. So that was news to my ears.
Right.
That's what we called it. It was like we're going to see some grass. That's that's what we were going to hear. So yeah, I mean, it just takes us back to really kind of talk about that. But we cannot not mention that. And I got to dispel this myth real quick. Okay, the group of guys known as the Belleville Three. At the time the Detroit Techno was founded, Belleville was not a city that was doing anything in terms of techno. The Belleville Three is only, and that was one of the things that I changed on that original entry in Wikipedia. Because Belleville, my grandmother lived in Belleville with cows. Okay. She had a farm. Okay. There was nothing happening in Belleville. The Belleville Three came to Detroit and they were spinning as Deep Space. They were spinning at these club parties that we're talking about. Direct Drive, okay? You know, Todd Johnson and Mike Clark, okay? You know, these guys were the ones who were spinning for all these party crews, okay? So Belleville had nothing to do with Detroit techno, okay? Detroit is where techno came from. And so that's something that was, it pisses me off to this day that we are not acknowledging that Detroit is the origination place. And the Belleville 3 to me is a slap in the face to Detroit techno. Okay, really. Word, the Belleville 3, not the members of the Belleville 3, because they are the originators. But calling them the Belleville 3, no, they should be called the Detroit 3. They should be called, something, something like that. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, when we first started this, I mean, when I didn't know anything about the Belleville 3. I knew the songs that I loved, and I started to learn the names of the artists and the titles of the songs and all that. But I still couldn't fathom. My mind couldn't wrap it around this Belleville thing. First of all, I never heard of Belleville before. I never been there. It definitely didn't sound. It didn't make any sense. And when you still bring it, I don't even know why people still bring it up. I never talk about the Belleville 3. Honestly, I talk about the Techno 6. Those are the 6 people in our film that we follow. And they are the 6 people on the magazine article that we built the film around. But even you just bringing it up just now, my mind draws a blank when people say Belleville 3. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So what about you, Reg?
I mean, I get it, but like David said, at the end of the day, man, it's Detroit. It ain't Bellevue. You know what I'm saying? Like, and even when they were there, I think they were probably like the only black kids.
Exactly. They were at Belleville High School. They were
in the school. But aside from that, man, it's Detroit. These guys are Detroit. Flat out. Yeah. These guys are Detroit. The music,
that's the key,
is Detroit. Period.
Yes. That's it. With these stories that we're trying to tell, we are the original sources. We were there. That gives us authority over other groups that are from other countries that come and try to tell this story. Right. We are people who lived and breathed it. And so it's vital that we tell this story for our kids, for the world to understand that this is an art form that came from Detroit, was born and was nurtured and incubated by young people in Detroit who were all teens. Okay, so hey, this is a powerful story for young people, and that's why we want to do this.
Exactly. Like, every time the word techno is mentioned, Juan Atkins should be getting a check. But hey,
exactly.
This stuff happens. You know what I mean? Like, these guys, this was all new to them. Like they weren't versed in the whole business aspect of the music business. They were kids and they had to, take their hits as they, got older and became a lot wiser in the business. But, like you said, that's why we are here, folks who lived and breathed a lot of these experiences, and what's so crazy, you have a story that you can tell from your perspective, Jennifer does, and so do I, and Christian, but at some point it kind of meets up, and that's the beauty of it. Like you said, the world has always painted this monstrous picture of our city that we love so much, and we know it's not perfect, but out of imperfection can come some beautiful things. And techno is one of those great things that came out of the ashes, of Detroit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, you couldn't have said it better. Yeah, I agree 100%. We gotta give respect to the originators, to the creators of this genre, and tell the story, that is free from free from misconceptions. That's free from things that are added to the story to make the story more interesting. We're trying to really tell it raw through the voices of the people who lived and created this art form.
Right. That's right.
I think it's also been a challenge for us to tell this story because I would say, in my opinion, by and large, most Americans don't know where this music came from. But what we found when we traveled overseas, that everybody knew where techno came from. They knew it came from Detroit. And so it was really exciting to meet other people who understood us, and they definitely treated us special because we were from Detroit and we represented this awesome music. But it I just saw that there was, a need for this to be, told on a mainstream platform so that, we could all be in agreement about how awesome our city is and how awesome this music is and how we can't just lose track of it. And we have to claim it. We have to. My motto is accentuate the positive. So when I saw what was happening to my city back in like around 2010, 2009, I just felt like, man, what can we do? How can we help our city out? This is right before the bankruptcy. And I wasn't even a filmmaker. I was working in the music business and trying to make my way with that and trying to figure out a new way to sell music. And then I just came across this, like I said in my story of Boulder, just this huge idea that, like I said, Detroit was more than just a wasteland, and that, when Motown left in 72, the music scene didn't die. And it had been alive and growing in the underground all this time. And why keep it a secret? I just felt the shortcoming that Detroit had about, how to really promote themselves in a global perspective. I felt like that was kind of like they were just didn't quite know how to do PR for themselves, the city. So I felt like, hey, I'm from LA. I know how things should look and how things should be presented. And that's kind of how I, got in to fit in. And so with the help of Christian and Dave and now Reggie, we've kind of worked it out, and so soon we'll have a finished product, and we expect that to be in spring 2021.
Yes. Love it. I didn't know there was a book accompanying. That's something I learned. That's something new I learned. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Yes, we've been working on that for over a year now.
Okay.
And it's been, oh my gosh, going back into my old phones and finding all these photos from all these trips we took. I mean,
you're going to have pictures in the book.
Oh, it's a photo book. It's a coffee table book with lots of photos. So I didn't realize I was just kind of taking pictures with my phone. Christian used to be mad that I would be taking pictures with my phone. He'd be like, why aren't you using that 5D? Why can't you use that 5D to take the photos? And I used to be afraid of the camera. And they used to make fun of me every time I would touch the camera. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. So I would just take out my phone everywhere. And then, the first time we interviewed Juan in London, I took photos of the lobby in the hotel. So you'll see some of those photos, and maybe it was Amsterdam actually. And so there was a festival going on called the Sonics Act Festival, and we interviewed him and met him for the first time at this hotel across the street from where the festival was taking place. And so I got photos of the rehearsal. I have photos of, all the signage and the performance. Wow. I made all these cool photos from the performance. And so it was just, there's lots of memories, and I'm so glad that I had the foresight to document our story, and the journey that we took to do this. And because now I'm starting to forget some of the stories. It's been so long. So, but we will have it available, the book, for pre-order on December 1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Nice.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think that all the the documentation and telling our stories is the key piece that the people need to understand. If we as African Americans don't tell our stories, nobody's going to tell our stories.
That's right.
And those stories will be lost like tears in the rain, to give a quote from my favorite film, Blade Runner. Okay.
That's
We
Blade Runner. Yeah.
Again, hey, we got to give a shout out to Afrofuturism and the cyberpunk that also birthed Detroit Techno. So it's one of those things where we got to tell our stories, and again, we're trying to teach kids to tell stories, and that's why part of this is we'll have educational components that will help young people to understand how to make films and documentaries following the footprint of what we've done with this project.
Absolutely. I'm excited because we are making history. There are plenty of films out there, but they just kind of gleam over the contribution that Detroit has made to the world as it relates to techno. So this is just awesome. Man, I hope you guys enjoyed our second episode of God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines Behind the Scenes podcast. So listen, we're not ending here, okay? We got another episode coming up. So we just appreciate you guys just tuning in and supporting us, okay? But before I go, I want to let you guys know that you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you are listening from, okay? And also, I wanted to give a special shout out to the company out of Los Angeles called Output, our brand partners right now. And I tell you, I love this company because as a composer and producer, I'm using a lot of the great sounds that they create every week. It's such a great tool. If you are a composer, music producer, please look at getting into what Output has to offer, okay? And you can also connect with us through our website at www.gsgedm.com to learn about the film that's due out in spring 2021. And don't forget, you can always support us by buying a really cool t-shirt, sweatshirts, and posters. So stay updated. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at God Said Give 'Em Drum Machines. Guys, thanks so much for joining us with this second episode. Stay tuned for the next one. And always remember, Detroit is techno. Peace.